Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Empowered Eczema podcast. We have a special guest today. We have Mehak Ahmed. She is a hypnotherapist for people with eczema. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
I'd love to hear your story with eczema because, like me, you're someone who suffered with it as well. So, how does your journey kind of progress from the very start of it, from when you first had eczema up to where you are now?
Sure. So I never had eczema as a child. I was quite lucky. I didn't suffer with it until I was 16 years old. That's when it first appeared. And it wasn't as bad as it got. So it was very mild. It kind of went away by itself, but it was during a stressful period when I was doing my exams at school. And after that, didn't come back for a while until maybe I was like 18, 19, again, going through the exams and all that stress build up. And it came back quite bad. And I remember going to the GP and they prescribed steroid creams and it went away. And I thought, oh, okay, that's sorted. And it would kind of come and go like that during stressful periods of my life. And all hell broke loose when I turned 27, I think so, about 5-6 years ago. There was a lot going on in my life and I had a build-up of so much negativity, so much tension, so much anger, frustration, and there was a lot that I hadn't resolved in my life, and there was a lot of issues that I was still facing, and I suppressed all of that. So I think my skin just said enough, and it just broke out like crazy. I never had eczema that severe in my life. I was in shock at what was happening to me. I had no control over it. The steroid creams were not doing anything at that point. I had to go on antibiotics quite a few times because my eczema was very prone to infections, and I just didn't know what to do for it. I was struggling. I went on a very long and mentally exhausting process of trying to find answers, thinking, why is it happening like this all of a sudden? And it wasn't until I started to notice the patterns, and I don't know why it took me so long to realize it was stress related, because it finally took me, going through a really demanding, stressful job and having anxiety pretty much every single day for me to realize, oh, okay, there's something going on here. And then when I started doing my hypnotherapy training and I learned more about myself, then that's when so many answers came to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, all this time my eczema was related to my emotional and mental well-being. So long story short, that's the beginning, and how I started my journey to healing. So I've been mostly clear from eczema for about 2 years now. Having said that, I'm kind of going through a mini flare up right now. But I know where that's come from. And now I really want to show people, what their eczema could mean, and to start noticing the patterns much sooner, because it took me forever and I wish I had learned this a lot sooner. It would have saved me a lot of misery, but everything happens for a reason.
Well, first off, congratulations on figuring your stuff out, because it's a tricky journey with eczema with lots of ups and lots of downs. And for you to even get to a place where you're like, hey, I was pretty much clear for 2 years is like huge congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
big haha to any of my clients listening to this, because you guys hear me talk about stress all the time. And now you're going to hear it even more because it's so related. So you said you kind of were able to reflect back on some of the stressors that were happening, like with 16-year-old going through exams and stuff like that. But if you could share maybe one or two instances where stuff was going on, where you saw a direct correlation with your skin and stress.
Sure. Reflecting back on it now, when I spoke about my skin going crazy, that's when I was lacking direction in my life, and I was really bitter about that, and things hadn't worked out the way that I anticipated. But I was also in a relationship that was coming towards an end, and I knew it was reaching that stage, but didn't want to admit it. So I carried on in that relationship that was quite toxic, not intentionally, like nothing bad about him, just one of those situations. And with my job as well, I was doing something that didn't feel aligned for me. So I was feeling quite resentful about that. And looking back now, I realized I was stressed pretty much every single day. No wonder my eczema flared up like that. Another example was the most recent one before, I started to realize it was stress related. And that's, again, with my job, the one I spoke about, where I had like anxiety every single day. And that's when I finally started to notice the patterns. But there would be so much chaos going on every single time. And I was such a people pleaser. I would always take on more than I could handle. I was putting my health at risk for others, trying to go above and beyond at my work that I knew wasn't even something that I really wanted to do. So there was even more anger there because I'm like, what is this all for? Why am I putting myself through this? Why can't I just say no? Why can't I be more assertive? In a way, that was a blessing in disguise because now I'm so assertive and like I've really learned to stand my ground. But those were two examples where I really saw the correlation, and it was more than just stress. Sometimes there's a lot of negative emotions there, as mentioned, like with the anger, resentment, and also I think a bit of grief with that relationship coming to an end, but wanting to hold on for as long as I could.
It's such a holistic process to try to heal eczema, and people don't realize that. It really has a lot to do with, yes, we can address this through food and supplements, but I just told a client yesterday that, okay, great, I kind of went that path when I first started, and then it kept coming back every time there was a massive emotional event. And emotional suppression, deep wounds, they all really impact your health. And people don't take that serious enough because there's a lot of downplaying. We live in a very, very busy lifestyle right now, and everything gets downplayed so much. Like, no, no, only stress is this type of stress. It's not this stress and this stress and this stress and this stress, where there's a lot of minor things that are happening, but affecting your nervous system in a really deep way. So, hypnotherapy, how did you get into it? Kind of walk us through like how you discovered hypnotherapy and then what it did for you and your eczema.
I'd love to. So when I was looking at holistic approaches to heal my eczema, I kind of came across hypnotherapy. I wasn't really looking for it. I was actually looking for Reiki, which is energy healing, because I thought maybe it's a spiritual thing. But I found a lady who did both, and I thought, okay, this sounds interesting. Let me give it a go. And I had the most surreal experience with that. I remember the next day, I was already looking after my body much better because that's another thing I did. I neglected myself a lot. And I remember she used suggestions, particularly for nourishing my body, drinking water, staying away from the harmful foods and things that could trigger my skin. So I thought, it's taken me ages to have that discipline, but having one session with her, I started to feel the difference already, not just with my habits, but I felt so much peace within. And that really shifted things. And it was amazing to see how quickly the changes took place. So I didn't get into my career until maybe a year after that, when I had some more hypnotherapy sessions. And it was also a time in my life where I thought I really need to do something now to get out of this feeling of being trapped with careers that are not for me. So everything kind of aligned and came together in a really nice way, because that's when I started looking at other careers. I did energy healing myself with Reiki. I practiced that for a bit, but I thought there's something that needs a little bit more here, and because hypnotherapy is such a direct way of making changes. And that's when I thought, okay, what have I got to lose? Let me just go and sign up for this training. And I've learned so much about myself. When you get this feeling that this is what you're meant to be doing. I had that almost instantly, and it felt so fulfilling to finally have that after years of being in jobs that I hated.
So, if someone has no idea what hypnotherapy even means, or
Mm.
if someone's not familiar with Reiki, how do you kind of describe what that looks like for someone? Like, maybe it sounds a little crazy to some people. How do you kind of bridge that gap, or like how would you describe it in a way that would make sense to like everyone?
Great question, because I get asked that all the time. All I say back to that is that it's a very deep state of relaxation. So what we call trance, I describe as being so deeply relaxed, where your conscious mind quietens down and your subconscious mind becomes very receptive. It becomes open to positive suggestions and a new way of doing things. And I guide a person into that trance state by relaxing them using an induction. And everyone is so different, so they'll have different needs when it comes to relaxing. And even the overthinkers and the overanalyzers, there's a way to relax you as well. And then when you're in trance, the words I'm saying, the techniques that I'm using in hypnosis can bring about positive changes in a very direct way by talking to your subconscious mind, and also going back to limiting beliefs, things that are stored within the body, like you spoke about earlier, the emotional suppression, finding a way to release all of that. And it just leaves you feeling so calm and peaceful and as if you've just refreshed.
And how does somebody work with you? Is this something that you have to do in person? Do you have online consultations? How does that work?
So I see clients all over the world over Zoom. It's such a great way of connecting with so many different people, because there are people in different countries who might need this help but can't access it there, or are looking for someone who has experience, because that's what a lot of people say. They want someone who gets it, who has been through it and truly knows the ins and out of it all, because unless you've been through eczema yourself, you have no idea just the toll that it takes on you. So yeah, I love the fact that I can see people all over the world. I do still have in-person sessions as well for people who prefer to have that comfort in person and have that one-on-one engagement face-to-face. So I'm based in the UK in London and still do some sessions in person.
I know somebody that needs to go see you. They also live in the UK. This podcast episode is definitely going to get sent to them.
Thank you. I
Of
hope it
course.
helps.
So I always ask, what is a piece of advice you would have based on your eczema healing journey to someone who is just in a rough place with everything?
Oh, that's such a great question again, because sometimes it can feel so overwhelming. You don't know what to do or where to start off with. And you also get so exhausted from trying so many different things. But one of the first things that you can do, and this is what I say to everyone, is just tune into your body. Really listen to what your body is saying to you. And there's so many different ways of doing that. Just tune into the quietness, into the stillness within, and ask your body, what is it trying to tell you? What is your eczema trying to tell you? What are the patterns? And also it helps to note them down. I kept a tracker throughout my journey as well. And that's one of the things that also pinpointed stress that came up every single time. And yeah, it took me forever still to realize. But that's one of the first steps you can do. Then afterwards, just start showing your body that you're listening to it by applying the changes. And that could mean so many different things, whether that's eliminating stress where you can in your life, or if you can't, changing your perspective and your mindset on it and finding a new way of thinking and doing things, changing your behavior, seeing what's keeping you stuck, what's no longer serving you, what you wish to let go of. And I find that just focusing on happiness and inner peace can make a world of a difference. When you're happy, your skin will reflect that. And that's been the case for me. I've seen that with my clients as well. And you can find ways to really connect to that inner peace within as well. There's so many different practices and techniques that you can do yourself at home. It doesn't really require a lot, but quietening down the mind and just tuning in, and then showing your body that you're loving and caring for it and that you're respecting it as well, and changing your relationship with the eczema. There's so many different things coming to my mind, but it just shows that you're not stuck with options when it comes to healing.
Definitely not. Especially on this podcast, I've talked about so many different broad range of treatments. I think what's so funny though is so many things that you're saying, if someone has like worked with me, they hear a lot of these same things and they're just going to be rolling their eyes. Now, another question that I wanted to ask was, have you noticed any patterns of like any emotional patterns or any sort of patterns in the people that you work with, whether it's, I don't know if you get into like conversations where you're asking them questions or anything, but is there anything common that you notice? Like I work with a lot of people who tend to have anxious attachment or have emotional suppression or have had certain types of childhood trauma. Have you noticed any patterns like that?
And now I'm just thinking about what you just said, that all my clients tend to experience those.
Yeah.
Emotional suppression, most of them do have some form of childhood trauma, and sometimes they're not even aware that they've experienced trauma because it can show up in different ways, and they may not think it's as severe, but it's still trauma. Another common one that surprised me is people pleasing. And I thought it was just me. But almost every single one of my clients have had that. They also struggle with self-love, even if they have the best intentions for themselves. Their self-esteem requires a little bit more of a boost, and they struggle with that. But I noticed, like you said as well, this comes down to suppression, but a lot of them really need to release everything like that has happened to them that has negatively impacted their lives and their health. I know, and that again is linked in with the trauma. So there's like a real kind of correlation and like link with all of these things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for today and kind of sharing your side of eczema and how you go about healing. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we sign off for today?
Just to give people some reassurance that it does get better, and we're both living proof of that. And I know sometimes it can feel like you're really trapped and you don't get a lot of medical support. They, always prescribe you medication that doesn't really do anything. It just masks up the symptoms. But you've got to be also proactive and committed to your healing. Don't give up, because there's always a way out. And the more committed and determined you are to heal, and you have that mindset, that resilient mindset, things will work out for you. Like if you have the best intentions and are willing to put in the work, healing happens.
I couldn't agree anymore. So thank you for coming on today. And all of her information will be in the description below if you're on YouTube or if you're watching this as a podcast. And I will see you guys in the next podcast. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.